He said it was a retreat. She said okay. But while he packed for work, she found the printed itinerary and a note that said, "Remember, it's a staff thing if Alyssa asks." He rehearsed his lie. She read the script. And when opening night came, she gave him his cue to exit. Alyssa from Napa, she found the script to his affair series, 10 True Affair Stories from California. Alyssa loved order. She made a career out of it. As one of Napa's most in-demand wedding planners, she lived by spreadsheets, itineraries, mood boards, and backup plans. Her world worked because it was structured, and within that structure, there was beauty. So when Matthew told her he had a 3-day team retreat in St. Helena, she didn't flinch. It made sense. Agencies did that sort of thing all the time: creative bonding, nature hikes, vision boards over brunch. He kissed her goodbye with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and said, "No reception up there. Don't worry if I don't text." She didn't. 3 days passed. He returned, brought her wine, told a generic story about group hikes and late nights brainstorming around fire pits. She smiled, nodded, believed it. Until the following week. She was reorganizing their office closet, a task she'd meant to do for months. Old vendor catalogs, expired business cards, dusty event programs. And then, tucked behind a stack of swatch books, she found it, a folder labeled Weekend Escape, B. She opened it, expecting to find something work-related, maybe a wedding package proposal. But what she found made her still. The first page was a printed itinerary. Friday to Sunday. Check-in time. Spa appointments. Dinner reservations. Wine tastings. Everything timed to the minute. Neat. Professional. But not official. Not from his company. There was a printed dinner menu with herbed risotto and a note that read, "Ask for window seat, she loves sunsets." Another page detailed massage bookings for 2. At the bottom of one sheet, scribbled in Matthew's handwriting, "Remember, it's a staff thing if Alyssa asks." She read that line twice. Then a third time. The phrase didn't hit like a bomb. It landed like a whisper, one that unraveled everything. She looked back at the itinerary. There was no mention of a team. No meeting rooms, no group activities. Just 2 names, again and again, Matthew, and someone listed only as B. It wasn't just betrayal. It was planning. Scripting. Rehearsal. The realization crept in slowly. Like fog through a vineyard. Alyssa had planned over 200 weddings. She'd crafted stories. Built moments. Managed the chaos of love. But now she saw it clearly. She had become the background character in someone else's scene. Her name wasn't in the script. Not even in the acknowledgments. She placed the folder back on the desk, careful not to crumple the corners. Then she sat down. And breathed. At first, she tried to rationalize. Maybe it was an old plan. Maybe it wasn't used. Maybe. But the receipt for the hotel was dated last weekend. The same weekend she'd spent repainting the guest room and thinking how quiet the house felt without him. Quiet, because it had been staged. She picked up the itinerary again. Scanned for anything redeemable. Anything that could turn this into a misunderstanding. Nothing did. There were no gaps. No improvisation. Just precision. And that, more than anything, was what made her stomach tighten. It was perfect. Planned, like the weddings she orchestrated. Only this time, she hadn't been invited. She leaned back in her chair, folder open in front of her, the edges perfectly aligned. It wasn't chaos that had betrayed her. It was order. And Matthew had used the language she trusted most: structure, detail, control to lie. Not impulsively. Not messily. But beautifully. She stared at the line again. Remember, it's a staff thing if Alyssa asks. And in that moment, Alyssa didn't cry. She started planning. The following morning, Alyssa poured her coffee and sat at the kitchen island like she did every day. But this time, instead of checking emails or reviewing client timelines, she opened her notes app and began listing every detail Matthew had mentioned about his retreat. No cell service up there. All meals are pre-arranged. We'll share a cabin as a team. Each phrase sat alone on the screen, harmless in isolation, but together they began to echo something far more rehearsed. She returned to the folder. Turned through the pages again. And there they were, identical lines. Not paraphrased. Not improvised. Word for word. She highlighted them in yellow. The same way she highlighted potential discrepancies in wedding schedules or vendor contracts. It was the same instinct: mark what doesn't match reality. She pulled up her calendar. Matched the itinerary's times with her own schedule. When he had claimed to be hiking, she was ordering new linens. When he said they were in a no-phone zone, she saw a timestamp on his last email to his assistant sent from a cafe with Wi-Fi. This wasn't a lie. It was a production. Matthew hadn't just covered his tracks. He'd storyboarded them. The script, she realized, wasn't just about covering the affair. It was designed to make her feel unnecessary. Don't worry if I don't text. Don't expect me to call. It wasn't avoidance. It was direction. Alyssa felt no tears. No heat rising in her throat. Just clarity. Cold, sharp, professional clarity. It reminded her of a time a bride's father had tried to sabotage the wedding schedule to stop his daughter from marrying. He'd done it subtly. Quietly. Moved flowers. Lied about arrival times. When Alyssa uncovered it, she didn't scream. She rebuilt the timeline, reprinted the programs, and had the bride walking down the aisle before anyone else noticed. This was no different. Except it was. Because this time, the bride was her. She began to rewind conversations from the last month. The quiet dinners. The forced smiles. The moments when he answered questions with half sentences, delivered like lines from a script. She could hear the rehearsals now. See the stage lights. Feel the artificiality behind his affection. She wasn't mad that he lied. She was devastated that he practiced. She had spent her career creating beautiful illusions: floral arches, candlelit dances, vows delivered under golden hour skies. but her illusions were honest, transparent in their artifice. Everyone knew weddings were designed. Marriages, though, they were supposed to be real. But Matthew had used her tools, her structure, her language, and turned it into fiction. She closed the folder again. She didn't need more proof. She had the script. And she knew the show was over. Alyssa drove to the resort just after sunset. The winding roads of Napa glowed orange and purple, the vineyard slipping into shadow as the last light of day dissolved behind the hills. She didn't play music. She didn't call anyone. Her phone was in airplane mode. This wasn't a conversation. This was closure. The resort was elegant but understated wood and stone architecture nestled among the trees, soft amber lighting guiding guests to entrances that whispered privacy. She parked in the upper lot, walked past the valet without a word, and stepped into the lobby with a calm that felt rehearsed, but wasn't. Her heels clicked softly on the tile as she approached the front desk. The young woman behind the counter greeted her with a professional smile. "Good evening. Checking in?" Alyssa nodded. "Yes. One night. Reservation under Alyssa Monroe." While the receptionist typed, Alyssa reached into her bag and pulled out the folder. The same folder she had found behind the swatch books. She had added one new item to it, a handwritten note on heavy stationery. "You rehearsed it well. But this isn't your show anymore." The receptionist handed over the room key. "Would you like assistance with luggage?" Alyssa shook her head. "Actually, I have a delivery. Can you please send this to Matthew Carter? He should be checked in already." The receptionist glanced at the name on the folder and nodded. "Yes, he's in cottage 4. I'll have it delivered right away." "Thank you." That was it. No dramatic reveal. No confrontation in the dining hall. No accusations hurled across candlelit tables. Alyssa took her key, walked to her room, and let the quiet hold her. Her room was cozy. A king-sized bed with white linens, a fireplace already glowing, a chilled bottle of water on the nightstand. She didn't unpack. She didn't sit. She stood by the window and watched the wind stir the trees. Somewhere, a door closed. Somewhere, a delivery was made. Somewhere, Matthew opened a folder. She imagined his face. The confusion. The recognition. The understanding that she had found it all. Not just the affair but the performance. And now, she'd ended it with a single, final cue. She wasn't the abandoned wife. She wasn't the betrayed woman. She wasn't even the audience anymore. She was the one who walked backstage and turned off the spotlight. She slept without dreaming. The next morning, she left before breakfast. Checked out quietly. No note. No second message. Just the empty stage behind her. And a life waiting beyond the curtain. Alyssa didn't tell anyone at first. Not friends. Not her sister. Not even her therapist. She needed silence, not sympathy. But silence, she realized, had never really protected her, it had only disguised her. One night, with a glass of wine beside her and the soft hum of the dishwasher in the background, She opened her laptop and began to write. The title came before the rest. How we all script ourselves into silence. It wasn't about Matthew. It wasn't even about infidelity. It was about performance, how so many women, herself included, played the role of the stable wife long after the part had stopped fitting. She wrote about emotional scripting. About nodding when you want to object. About saying I'm fine when you're fractured. About believing you're part of the story when you've been written out of the scene. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. She posted it on a small professional blog, one she'd used years ago to document event planning insights. By morning, her inbox had nearly collapsed. Hundreds of messages. Wedding photographers. Mothers. CEOs. Teachers. Strangers. I feel like you wrote this inside my head. I didn't even know how quiet I'd become until I read this. This made me stand up from a dinner I didn't want to sit through. She didn't reply to every message. But she read them. Every single one. Within 2 weeks, she was invited to speak at a women's business panel in Santa Rosa. A month later, she hosted a workshop on emotional boundaries for female creatives. The invitations kept coming, not because she was famous, but because she had told the truth, beautifully and without apology. She never mentioned Matthew. Never published the itinerary or the note. She didn't need to. The power wasn't in the exposure. It was in the rewrite. She told every audience the same thing: if you wouldn't accept the role on stage, stop accepting it in your life. And they listened. Not because she was loud, but because she had once been silent and now she wasn't. Alyssa still planned weddings. Still matched florals to seasons and made timelines sing. But she no longer performed in someone else's version of marriage. She lived outside the script. And in doing so, she gave others permission to do the same. She didn't win. She exited. Gracefully. Quietly. Completely. And that was more powerful than any standing ovation could ever be. Some stories don't end with applause. They end when the woman quietly rewrites the script and exits before the curtain call. But in our next story, the truth doesn't wait to be discovered. It walks in. Wearing heels and holding a glass of red wine. Right in the middle of his dinner date. With someone who wasn't his wife. Next, we head to Palm Springs. Where a woman doesn't find a lie. She interrupts it. Stay tuned for the next chapter in 10 True Affair Stories from California. Because some betrayals don't hide backstage. They play out under the spotlight.